My goodness, it's been a busy day for new bike launches. We had the Canyon Ultimate this morning, and now we have the all-new Trek Domane. And no, this behind me isn't the new bike in question. This, in fact, is a brand new Trek Madone, just arrived for testing. And would you believe it, this is the only bike in the UK, and right here in my garage. And yes, there's a full review on this bike coming very soon, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to see that. But now let's focus on the brand new Domane, go through the changes on the new bike and how they made it lighter than the old bike, which is a good thing for sure. And also talk about a topic of whether endurance road bikes are still relevant in this era of super versatile and wide tyre clearance gravel bikes, and then lightweight bikes that have ever increasing tyre clearance and more comfort as well. So let's dive in. Since the Domane launched many years ago, developed for the cobbled classics like Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders, and helped by the input from Fabien Cancellara, the Domane has been a very popular endurance road bike. Definitely one of the comfier options in my opinion. Massive tyre clearance as well. Some really neat features like down tube storage as well. Mudguard mounts too, very important here as a UK cyclist. But the weight has always been an issue. But thankfully, one of the big changes to the new Domane is the fact it's been put on a diet, and it managed to save a whopping 300 grams from the new bike. Most of the weight savings come from a revision of the key feature of the Domane, the ISO-speed decoupler. This system that decouples the seat tube and seat post from the rest of the frame and allows the saddle to flex back and forth and give more comfort when you're in the saddle on rough roads, light gravel, and of course cobbles and pavé. They've also put the front ISO speed from the old bike in the bin, so no more flexing steer tube and no more special bearing in that top cap, and that's no bad thing in my opinion. In my experience from riding the previous generation Domane, that front ISO speed wasn't as successful as the rear ISO speed in giving that real tangible boost in comfort over other bikes with a simpler system. And the reason Trek have dropped that front ISO speed is because when they first brought it out, tyres were smaller volume and narrower than they are now. The trend is today for wide tyres, tubular tyres as well, wider rims and much lower pressures. So those benefits from that wide tyre, low pressure system outweigh the negatives in terms of weight and basically render it obsolete and not as effective as it used to be when it first launched quite a few years ago. Now back to the rear ISO-speed decoupler, and it looks a lot simpler, looks a lot more discreet, and from a distance you can hardly spot it. The old ISO-speed decoupler was quite chunky looking, definitely looked heavy and was heavy, as the weight savings on a new frame prove. But one downside to the revision and that weight focus is now it's not adjustable. The old version you could adjust it to make it softer or firmer, but now you can't adjust it, it's fixed. And the reason they bin the adjustability of the ISO speed is due to feedback that many people, whether pros or general consumers, just weren't making the most of that adjustment, and that's something I can fully believe. It's like on mountain bikes with suspension knobs and dials. Very few people actually make the most of all those adjustment dials and leave it in a fixed position and ride it. So having a simpler setup definitely benefits the bike in terms of weight, and one less thing to worry about. Just have it in the optimum setting from the factory. The other benefit of the new frame design and that simpler ISO-speed decoupler is we now have a regular seat post, so no special funky seat mask. It's a D-profile seat post as most top-end road bikes have, for a bit more aero and a bit more compliance. And the seat clamp is now in the top of the seat tube with a very neat cover held in place by magnets, which they assure us shouldn't rattle out and go free when you're riding on pavé and cobbles. Another bugbear of the current or old Domane now was the cable routing, which went around the stem and into the top tube, which I didn't like personally, and something that would put me off buying a bike. But now we have a much simpler, much more elegant cable routing system, much more aligned with how most other bike manufacturers are routing internal cable systems. So rather than go over and around the stem and into the top tube, then I go underneath the stem and into the front of the head tube as well. So much cleaner, much simpler design, and that's a big improvement. We also have revised tube profiles to try and reduce the drag where possible. The old Domane brought some aero to the platform for the first time, So now we have a bit more aero just to reduce the drag where possible, because it is a bike designed for racing. And while Paris-Roubaix is a race with 55 kilometers of brutal cobbles, where the comfort benefits of the Domane will definitely be a factor, there's still a heavy chunk, 200 kilometers in fact, of smooth-ish flat roads where the headwind, crosswinds and the high speeds will be a factor. So the aero benefits will definitely be a consideration there. Now we'll talk about the choice of an aero bike versus an endurance road bike at races like Paris-Roubaix later in the video, because I spoke to Trek about that very topic. Like the previous Domane, we still have massive class-leading tyre clearance, a 38mm tyre with 6mm clearance around the tyre and the frame. So you could go wider. I'm sure a nice 38 or 40mm gravel tyre might fit, and that's something I can't wait to try out in the future. And that tyre clearance dwarfs any other endurance road bike, and it's nearly as generous as many race gravel bikes. But despite the fact you could probably fit a gravel tyre in there, depending on the tyre and rim combination and how dry or wet the gravel you're riding is, Trek is very keen to reinstate the fact this is a road first and then maybe light gravel bike second. They have the checkpoint, which is a gravel first and road second bike, and that's how they're trying to split the difference between a Domane with that 38mm tyre clearance and a checkpoint with even bigger tyre clearance. I don't know how many people buying a Domane are fitting the wide tyre they can, but let me know down below if you have Domane and how big a tyre you are fitting. You do have mudguard mounts on the Domane as well, thankfully. So mudguards with a 35mm wide tyre would be a really sweet setup for winter riding in the rain and dealing with rough roads and even light gravel as well. Other carryover features from the old Domane SLR to the new version include the down tube storage, which is a really neat way to put your inner tube and tools out of sight and out of mind and out of all the road spray and dirt as well. And then we now have 2 bolts on the top tube, further blurring the lines between an endurance road bike and a gravel bike. So more storage options there for food, put your phone there and other bits and bobs as well. Personally, I'm not sold on the top tube mounts, whether on a gravel bike or a road bike, but I'll let you decide by leaving a comment down below. So most of the changes so far have been focused on the SLR version. There's also an SL below it, and of course an RSL above it. And the RSL is the race shop version. That's the one the pros are riding. All the same features, more or less, from the SLR on the RSL, but a few key differences, just so you know if you're deciding between the SLR and the RSL. Now the biggest change is the RSL is much more aggressive in its geometry, with a 4cm lower stack, so much lower front end. Tyre clearance is also reduced to 35mm because the pros aren't using anything wider than a 35 on that sort of bike. Another key difference between the 3 models is that the RSL is only compatible with electronic group sets, while the SLR can be used with mechanical or electronic, but the company is only speccing electronic group sets on that range, while the SL would come with mechanical and electronic group sets. Now, I won't go through all the details of the full range and prices and specs here in the video because it'll take me ages and ages, so instead go to their website, link down below. It's different specifications for where you live, US, Australia, UK, and the prices are different as well. So go and check out the range, but there's the full range of prices from the SL through the SLR up to RSL as well. And definitely some nice picks in the range, but as ever, Ultegra, New 105 will be popular price points for sure. Now, in putting together this video for the new Domane, I've been thinking about whether endurance road bikes are still relevant, and it's not the first time I've had this thought either. We're seeing on one end road bikes like the Emonda, the giant TCR, the Specialized Tarmac, having ever increased tyre clearance, so now you can fit up to 32 on some of those race bikes, which is crazy compared to what years ago would have been an endurance road bike in terms of tyre clearance. And those bikes also offer more comfort as well, and retain that lightweight and aero focus and all the attributes you want from a race focused bike. And then on the other side, we have gravel bikes, which can be as fast and racy as the 3T Exploro Race Max, the Cervelo Espero, the Vileo Rave, with 38 40mm tyre clearance, lightweight aero frames, and then much bigger tyre clearance and much more versatile, much more rugged bike packing adventure options as well. And they're all much more versatile: road tyres, gravel tyres, bike packing, panniers, whatever it is, mud guards as well. So the endurance road bike sits between those two kind of categories and has been squeezed on both sides ever more than before. And really it's a question of whether you think an endurance road bike still suits your requirements and still fits your needs better than a road bike with big tyres or that gravel bike with some fat, slick tyres. The changes that Trek has made to Domane probably make it more relevant than before, but in a way I can't help thinking this is a bike they should release a few years ago. Some of the changes are too late. The weight saving especially, something they should have done 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I definitely think in the time the last model has been out, more people have been going to the gravel bike market or back to a race bike market and getting what they need from those two bikes rather than what the Domane offers. During the launch of the new Trek Domane, I had the opportunity to speak to Trek and ask them a few questions around the topic of the relevance of endurance road bikes. So I asked them if they still see a future for endurance road bikes given how popular gravel bikes are. And it simply said, yes, it sees a future for endurance road bikes, which you think they would say. They have an endurance road bike and it's in their interest to ensure there is a market for it. So I guess they're hoping the changes to the new Domane will ensure bikes like the Domane retain that relevance going forward. But leave a comment down below if you agree with them, if you still think the Domane and other endurance bikes are still relevant in today's market or relevant to you as a consumer. Going back to racing, because we've seen the women's Paris-Roubaix, the last two editions being won on the Domane, but on the men's side, many are going to aero road bikes because you can fit wide tyres on these aero road bikes now. Like this would take a 30, maybe a 32 at a pinch, and you get more comfort as well. So is there still a point for a bike like the Domane for the pros when it comes to races like Paris-Roubaix if they can get the comfort from a bike like this and then have all the aero speed on the flatter non-cobble sections? And it's a question that Trek says that it grapples on an almost daily basis, but it sets a benefit in compliance and in geometry, it being longer, lower and slacker than a pure race bike, are tangible differences and benefits over the cobbles and help in the latter stage of that race where fatigue and tiredness are definitely something you need to overcome if you are trying to win that race. And it says for that reason the Domane still has a relevance for the pro riders. And whether the pros are forced to ride a Domane or the Madone like we have here behind me, it's basically up to them. They can choose the bike they feel is suitable for them, and Trek simply tries to offer the best bikes for them to choose, whether it's the Domane, the Amonda or the Madone. So that Trek's kind of reply to questions on relevance of the Domane, whether for consumers buying it as a leisure recreational activity or the pros using it to try and win the toughest races in the pro calendar. So that, in a nutshell, is a brand new Trek Domane, and if you want to see my full video review on it very soon, make sure you subscribe to the channel by hitting this button right here. And if you want to see reviews of other endurance road bikes, then check out this video right here. But that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching.